Welcome to the Bigfoot Manifesto, the podcast where progressive politics, cryptid metaphors, and a little campfire satire collide. I'm Dave Pederson, Oscar-nominated producer, recovering journalist, and the only guy who thinks Bigfoot would make a better president than most of Congress. Today we're tackling conspiracy theories, from grainy forest footage to the even grainier truth behind QAnon. And we're asking, was Bigfoot actually a socialist? Spoiler, he's not hoarding gold-plated toilets in a Manhattan penthouse. To help me make sense of how conspiracy culture went mainstream and how Trump turned lies into political fuel, I'm joined by Mike Rothschild, author of The Storm is Upon Us and one of the sharpest voices on QAnon and disinformation. Bigfoot sightings and QAnon posts share a DNA. Both thrive where trust in institutions collapses. People want meaning. They'll grab the nearest blurry photo or half-baked drop. Today on our show, for our first show, I'm very excited to have Mike Rothschild, who is, to me, is the king of conspiracy theories and what they are and how many they are and what they mean and how they started. So thanks, Mike, for being on our very first show to kick this off. I think you're the perfect guest to be on this one. So thank you for coming on.
Well, absolutely. And any podcast that so effusively praises me is one that will have my guest appearance.
Yeah. So Mike, I've read your book and I've seen you like many times. I haven't read Jewish Space Lasers though, but I will because it looks like a must. But yeah, your book was like just so fascinating. I was like, it hurt my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Reading it, just like, trying to figure it out. And so, I wanted to bring you on here because, we want to talk about how, myth, folklore like Bigfoot has endured for decades. And now we have all these conspiracies out with the internet. And, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, why do people turn to conspiracies when institutions fail them?
Well, that's a great place to start because the reasons why people turn to conspiracy theories and sort of conspiracism in general, it's not based out of hatred. It's not based out of racism. It's not based out of anti-Semitism. I mean, obviously, all of those things can be part of the conspiracy theory world. But the people who turn to conspiracy theories are people who are trying to find answers. And they're trying to bring order to what seems chaotic. And they're trying to bring meaning to what seems random. So the example that I will always go to is the Kennedy assassination. People gravitate toward conspiracy theories about the Kennedy assassination, not because they really believe that it was the Corsican mafia or the CIA or the Secret Service or the Russians or the Cubans. People gravitate toward conspiracy theories about Kennedy because John F. Kennedy was a hero. He was a titan. It was the president of the United States. He's untouchable. And yet this loser with a rifle killed him without a lot of effort. And rather than say that this was just bad timing or poor planning on the part of the Secret Service or whatever it is, we want there to be a purpose. We want there to be meaning, and not only meaning to why it happened, but meaning to his death. So I think what conspiracy theories brings that so many of our institutions don't is meaning and purpose and order.
Yeah, I think I like how you started with JFK because, I mean, I've always I believed, the Warren Commission. When you look at all the evidence, it's like, what? It was just a perfect storm in sequence of events for Lee Harvey Oswald to do that. And it's funny because I look at these like conspiracy theories, especially the JFK ones, because, I've been dealing with them since I was like a teenager, talking to people that, and still believe it to this day. And it's almost like a religious belief. It's like a religious belief to them. Like, no matter what I remember one time, one of my friends so deep into it. And I was like, all right, let's watch. I was showing him this documentary where this group of Australian guys like recreated it. And he's like, oh, well, they're part of the system. Like they're guys from Australia that have like, an effects company. And like, they're just in. Like, I don't know. And to me, it's also is like interesting is like to get away with a conspiracy like that. And, it'd have to be known by so many people. And, they can't keep a secret. It was like, I remember when Matt Taibbi was like debunking like the 9/11 conspiracy, and I think he came up with like something like 6,000 people would have had to been involved in this conspiracy. And it's like, how could you keep that? So, I mean, that's the thing. So, I mean, do you think of it as like almost religious belief? Like, just a firm belief. This is what I believe, and that is it.
Yeah, it is faith. There is a huge faith component to conspiracism. It's wanting to believe things that you want to be true. Whether it is 9/11, you want there to have been the government behind it rather than the terrorists. So therefore, you will talk yourself into any logical pretzel that you need to twist yourself into in order to believe these things. And that's why debunking them is so hard, because you're not dealing with a rational belief. You're dealing with something people want to be true. If you look at QAnon, people want QAnon to be real. People want there to be a Q team working with Donald Trump to save the children. The fact that it's not true and that there's nothing about Q that really stands up to any kind of evidentiary standard, that doesn't matter. What they want they want it to be true, and therefore it's true.
All right. So speaking of QAnon, let's take a little dive. You can see I got a little QAnon shaman statue behind me. So what are the parallels you see between folklore myths like Bigfoot and political conspiracies like QAnon? Like, what do you see? Are there any parallels, or is it just differences? Or
sure, the biggest parallel is really this idea that the truth is being kept from us. That whether it is Bigfoot or some other form of cryptozoology, or whether it's QAnon, or whether it's the government did 9/11, the belief is that they are hiding something from us, and only by doing our own research, whether it's sort of going out into the field and, tromping around the forests of Oregon, or, digging through archives or making videos, we have to dig up the truth ourselves. We're never going to get it from the people in power, because the people in power are corrupt and they're evil and they're keeping us down. So we can subvert their schemes by doing our own research. Now, again, you're living in this parallel world where, on the one hand, these schemes would require, like you said, thousands of people, and presumably be done in a way that nobody could ever figure them out. But they're also figured out easily and instantly by some guy on Twitter. So it's a universe that just by its very nature doesn't really stand up to logical scrutiny, but the people who believe it don't want it to, and they don't require it to. It's just wanting to believe that something is true. So whether it's Bigfoot, or whether it's UFOs or angels or crop circles, or any of the kind of classic conspiracy theories, or the much more harmful modern stuff, it's really the same thing. There is a truth that is being kept from us, and we're going to go find it.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, for example, like, if we talk about like UFOs, or Loch Ness monster, Mothman, whatever, the crop circles, is they're benign, they're fairly harmless, I mean, the people that believe them, like, they're believers, like we said, they have this religious, sort of like faith in these, in cryptids or whatever. But, they're benign. So how did we get from things like, all right, UFOs, because this is all, what are we looking at? Like last 60, 70 years, maybe, because UFOs, like starting from Roswell or something is, I guess was a start of that. And then, like we talked the Kennedy conspiracy, but how did we get to this point from like these kind of like, it's fun, those things are fun in, you watch them and you're like, oh, that's interesting and it's fun. I don't believe it, but it's fun. So how did we get to the scary part? Like, what was the evolution there?
Well, the evolution is when it really started to become a business. And, for a long time, conspiracy theories were something you had to put some work into finding. And even if it was something much more far right, if it was like anti-Semitic pamphlets or like Cold War era self-published books, you kind of had to know what you were looking for, and you had to know the people who had that stuff, and you had to know people who wanted to talk about it. Most people, it was just like, I don't want anything to do with that. That's weird. Why would I talk about that? Or it was just a joke. I mean, something like Bigfoot or alien abduction. It's like, yeah, that's only like meth heads in the middle of nowhere who think that they got an anal probe. but really just got blackout drunk. I mean, there was always this kind of realm where like no one important really believed this stuff. But then it started to become much more mainstream. And it really kind of dovetails with the internet, because the internet really allowed these people to find each other and to work off of each other's delusions. One of the things I do in Jewish Space Lasers is I kind of trace the earliest origins of Rothschild family conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I went back to like 1994 with Usenet and like a lot of these like Yahoo groups. A lot of this stuff's not even around anymore.
Yeah.
This was before most people still had email addresses. But people were finding each other in conspiracy theory communities. One of the really, really major names in 90s conspiracism was this guy, Bill Cooper, who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse. It's a hugely, hugely influential book in the conspiracy world. He got started on conspiracy theory internet in 1988 with a message board called, I think it was called Paranet. The modern World Wide Web didn't even exist. So these people found ways to communicate with each other and share these things that were always out there. They were just so siloed and walled off. So it was really our ability to find each other and connect with each other and form communities of outsiders who suddenly started to realize, oh, we're being lied to in the same way. Our enemies are the same people. We can band together and do something about it. So when conspiracism became something that a group could embrace, I think it really took off into places powered by group delusions.
Yeah. So, this is the thing. It was like, do you see a point where these conspiracy theories, like, they just become like, it's propaganda at like this point, especially with these new ones, because these are sort of like political conspiracies, like crazy, like Pizzagate and things like, they're absurd. Like I always saw like every time I look, I'm like, oh, is that the Onion? It's one of those things where I say the hardest job in the world the last like 15 years is writing for the Onion, trying to beat the, news cycle. I really do. I think they have a difficult job and they still get it done. But do you see, where I'm getting at with that is, that it's become like it's gone from conspiracy to propaganda.
Yeah, it really has. And I think one of the things that's really driven this embrace of conspiracism by political parties, particularly Republicans, is the fact that there is this us versus them propaganda element to it. Propaganda wants you to do something. It wants you to feel a certain way. Sometimes it's just like, buy this pack of cigarettes, or, hey, subscribe to this podcast. But sometimes it's getting people to do things that they maybe ordinarily wouldn't want to do. And what you do is you give people an enemy. You give people a way that someone is after them and someone is hurting them. Conspiracy theories function very well to do that. So conspiracy theories and propaganda work really well together, because so many conspiracy theories are about someone doing something to you. And so much of propaganda is about making you feel a certain way about whether it's a product or going to a movie, or making you feel a certain way about that same group of people. So if you look at somebody like the Nazis, I mean, it's the easy example, but the Nazis used conspiracy theories in their propaganda. They had an entire wing of propagandist filmmakers making use of conspiracy theories about Jews, about Eastern Europeans, about Bolsheviks. So all of these things go hand in hand, because the central element is scapegoating. Someone did this to you. Here's what they did, and here's how we're going to get back at them. Conspiracy theories and propaganda work together perfectly.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's, of course, Goebbels and the Nazis, they mastered it. And I mean, I'm all my undergraduate work's like in history and in foreign relations and things like that. So, I've been reading about this stuff since, I was a kid. And, as soon as I watched the whole Trump thing, I'm like, oh, wow, they're just using the whole like Goebbels playbook. It's the exact same thing. It's, I mean, look at their big thing now is transgender people. And I think this, like, it's like 0.5% of like the adult population is, it's insane. Like I see, like I have a couple, like I see like libertarian friends, or like, so like some like, I always just say they're conservatives that just want to smoke pot, but it's, or have legal pot, but it's, and other things, and not pay taxes, of course.
Yeah.
But, you see them and they're like, oh, this transgender thing and like these NCAA athletes. I'm like, there's like a handful of them. Like, why is this such a big issue? Why are you going crazy?
Right. We keep talking about like the same 3 people involved in this because it's not an issue. But the way that they hammer it over and over and over on their kind of grievance-based TV shows and podcasts, where something like, changing the logo on the Cracker Barrel sign or the green M not being sexy anymore is like elevated to a national threat. And it's a constant drumbeat of they're after you, they want to destroy you, they want to destroy your way of life. They will cancel you if you say one wrong thing. We've got to fight back. And whether that's trans athletes, whether that's the death of Charlie Kirk, or whether that's, now we have a black stormtrooper, it is a constant equalizing of everything as like a nuclear warhead in the war against liberalism.
Wow, you're a trap. You remember them all because some of those go quick, like the green. I'm like, I haven't thought about that one.
I remember. I remember them because they're so stupid. I mean, the one that for some reason sticks out in my head is somehow Keurig got on the wrong side of the far right. I don't remember why.
I remember this, yeah.
And
I remember the current thing. I forgot what it was though.
I don't remember why. But then, like, Sean Hannity did this, like, screaming rant about how people should, like, destroy their Keurigs. Like, if you don't have a Keurig, buy a Keurig just so you can destroy it on camera. Or every time they get mad at Starbucks, like, go to Starbucks and buy a latte and pour it out. Like, do you understand how boycotts work? Do you even know what you're angry about? I mean, and it's just it's so primal. And and has such a need for constant refreshing with new grievances. And that's why these kind of instant conspiracy theories work so well, because they will pop up based on a news event and then they're just gone in a couple of days.
Yeah, there's just so many. It's amazing. No wonder it's like, it's taking your whole career right now just to keep up with them. It's like, it's just like one after the internet. What are you going to do? It's like, it's absolutely crazy. And people and you can't fact check them because, those facts aren't right. It's just like, well, that's not true. It doesn't matter what you send them. You can't convince them.
No.
So, speaking of that, so like, how has Trump use this vacuum of trust to his advantage, like to get where he is right now?
Well, it's goes hand in hand with how he rose up. I mean, he started his political career in, around 2011, not based on tax policies or what he would do about China. It was Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States and they're all lying to you. And he embraced the stuff that the Republican Party ran screaming from. And in the process, he found a group of voters who felt like they weren't being told the truth, who felt like the mainstream conservative punditry wasn't talking about Obama's birth certificate. They weren't talking about the Clinton body count. They weren't talking about how the globalists did 9/11. They were just, pushing their same uniparty. We're all the same. Our differences aren't real. We're all working together to fleece you. We're the forgotten man. Really tapped into that. He tapped into people who really felt like both the Democrats and Republicans were the same. And everyone was lying and everyone was out to get them. But I'm an outsider. I'm not a politician. The politicians hate me. That's why you should love me.
Yeah. I get that. Like the interesting thing on my last film, Americonned, which is about income inequality, but we covered, a lot of it was like rode around with like Chris Smalls from, the start of his, strike with Amazon and everything. It's, I don't know. It's just become so crazy and, you can't convince these people, that like they're all like these union people. Some of them are like, well, I like him because he's not a politician, and I'm like, that's not a good reason,
right?
It's just not a good reason. It's like he's a
And
businessman. I'm like, yeah, but statistically, he might be the worst businessman
Right.
in U.S. history.
Right.
You know?
And also, he's been running
You know?
for president for like 12 years straight. So, no, he kind of is a politician at this point. I mean, it's like all of those.
You can put, you know, yeah. I mean, let's be honest. You know, Trump doesn't need like blurry Bigfoot photos. You know, he creates his
No.
own myths in
Yeah.
HD and he repeats them until they feel true. You know, it's just like we talked about with Goebbels. You know, Goebbels, you know, tell the lie enough and it becomes the truth, you know? And I think that's where we're at, you know, right now. You know, what I want to get into too is talking about the left, you know, whether you want to say liberals, progressives, Democrats, you know, I don't know, I guess you kind of lump it in, you know, but, you know, the brutal truth is, you know, the right owns the conspiracy space. You know, Trump's perfected it, you know, stop the steal, fake news, witch hunt, all brand exercises, all propaganda, simple, sticky, emotional, you know, meanwhile, you know, like, you know, progressives, you know, show up with a fact-checked white paper, you know, and try chanting that at a rally. It seems to not have the same effect, you know? And the first question I have for you there is like, how does Trump weaponize lies and propaganda differently than past politicians?
Well, Trump.
Specifically, let's stay with American politicians.
Sure. I mean, Trump lies about everything. And the thing is that the lies aren't small, they're enormous. And what we've found is that the bigger a lie is, the easier it is to believe. So, you know, during the 2024 campaign, he's like promising these things that are not possible in any way. Or things that he would never ever actually deliver on, that he doesn't. I mean, he talked about day one, I'm going to cut your electric bill in half. The president of the United States has no influence over what your electric bill is. Yeah, maybe energy policy and maybe drilling more, maybe would make energy a little more affordable, but your electric bill is not going to be cut in half. That's not a thing. He talked about getting American astronauts on Mars by the end of the decade. Literally impossible. Things that just were preposterous. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine the day after I'm elected. Oops, guess that didn't happen because it was insane. It was impossible. But the lies were so big and told so convincingly that you just go, okay, maybe he's got some way to do it. I mean, if you look at his health stuff, he's got this big bruise on his right hand that he just like is putting this really light colored makeup on. Like, it's really obvious. And finally the White House came out with an explanation. It's from shaking hands too vigorously. Who on earth would believe that? But it's such a big lie that you go, okay, like I can't tell you it's not true. I can tell you it's ridiculous, but that doesn't mean it's not true. So he's weaponized lying by just doing it at a volume and a pace and a kind of grandiosity that we really haven't seen in American politics in a long time. I mean, maybe in the last 100 years. And he's just really good at it, and he's really prolific.
Yeah, I mean, look at it, like you sit there and like people like me and you, actually, we probably don't laugh anymore, but, you'd see these like grandiose statements from him and promises, and you just have to laugh. Like, recently with the, drug prices, they're reduced 1,500%.
Right,
I'm
yeah,
like, oh, wait, so they're going to start paying me to take drugs?
Right.
It's impossible. It's like, so they're going to pay me like $1,000 to take this drug? I mean, is that how it's going to work? Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But people, as I say, with this guy, there's always going to be that 33% of the population. I just don't think that percentage is ever going to flip. I mean, I don't know. I mean, seeing it, on the internet and how people are reacting, I see some people are like, oh, I can't believe I voted for this guy. Like, what was it? Like, he's not, I mean, still I'm like, well, what did you think figured this out? It took you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a tiger is going to act like a tiger, that's just how it is, he just keeps going, but they'll never, ever, it doesn't matter, what you show them. It's like, I mean, so why do you think, his falsehoods stick even after being disproven? How do you think? Is it because they're just in a vacuum now and they like, they just shelter out the sound?
It's funny with Trump, there's always a cycle, especially when something really opposite of what he campaigned on happens. If you look at Epstein, and suddenly after months of pushing the Epstein files and we're going to release it all, it's all on Pam Bondi's desk. It just needs to get redacted. It's coming. And then all of a sudden it's like, there's no Epstein files. That's a hoax. Anybody who believes that's an idiot. That was Biden and Obama who did that. I mean, you would think that would be a moment where where Trump's base would go, you spent years campaigning on releasing the truth about Epstein. A few months ago, you had this big thing at the White House with big influencers and their Epstein files binders. Now you're telling us that it's all a hoax and that we're idiots for believing it. You would think that would be a moment where people go, no, I'm done with this. Like, this guy's been lying to me. But you are so desperate for your dreams to come true and your enemies to be brought to justice. You just go with it. It's really the reason why people stick with prophetic cults after the prophecies haven't come true. You want it to come true. And if it doesn't come true now, well, maybe it'll be next week. And, the guru just needs to adjust a few things. And I've believed him for this long. And maybe what's another week or two? And if I walk away now, well, I'll miss all the big prophecy and won't I look stupid? So it is that sunk cost fallacy of you've spent so much time on this and you have believed it so deeply that to walk away from it is like a personal failure. And I think for a lot of people, you just go, yeah, maybe I don't love this, but I still trust him and he's still got my back and I'm still going to have his back and we're going to see this through together. Meanwhile, Trump doesn't care about any of these people. Will stab anyone in the back immediately for any reason. And people do eventually figure that out, but it takes a lot of knives in the back for some of these people to come around and some of them never will.
Yeah. To put on like a look into the future kind of thing. Like when he's gone, though, I think, his parents lived into their 90s, which scares me to death. Exactly. Scares me to death. But, do you think it will be a thing, like Stalin, where people, for decades kept, a bust of Stalin or, a picture of Stalin in their house in the Soviet Union? Do you think he'll still retain that cult of personality?
That's a really good question. And I think that the future of American politics is going to depend on the answer to that. If he just sort of leaves after a second term and just sort of goes away, I think the cult will fizzle out because I think of all of the people who are trying to succeed him, none of them are him. None of them have the juice. A lot of people have tried to be Trump. I mean, if you look at the Republican primary in 2024, like Ron DeSantis was like, even practically marketing himself was like, I'm Trump without the baggage. I'm like, the baggage is the whole appeal with Trump. It's all about the baggage. It's about, they tried to impeach me over a perfect phone call and they're out to get me and they hate that I've got such a nice apartment. Like all of the nonsense and the failure and the hypocrisy, you love him more because of it. And that you can't say that about Ron DeSantis or JD Vance or any of the other people who have kind of been around his orbit who've tried to pick up his aura, but they can't quite do it. So I think if he puts his weight behind JD Vance and Vance loses, I think you're suddenly going to see a lot of people going, yeah, I never really believed, it was all just part of a means to an end. Like I was never part of it. And then some people are going to go like, yeah, I'll die before I leave Trump behind. And it really just depends on how this all happens. I mean, if he says, I want a primary, like I'm going to endorse whoever wins the way everybody else does, that's one thing. But if he's like, I'm getting behind JD Vance, or if he's like, yeah, I'm going to run for a third term, try to stop me, which he could do that too, which is terrifying.
It's fascinating in a little way though, Mike. I like thinking about it like now in some of the recent events, like Charlie Kirk, Epstein. Yeah. Now thinking like Charlie Kirk, you're seeing all these conspiracies like pop up, like he had him whacked to distract from Epstein.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was seeing on the left a bunch. It's like Trump killed him because, so we won't talk about Epstein. Like, that's like Charlie Kirk was like one of Trump's biggest evangelists, but also not at all a threat to Trump. Like Charlie Kirk was like 31. If he was ever going to run for office, it'll be in another decade once he's like made as much money as he can from Turning Point USA. Like Trump is going to be, either dead or like gibbering away in a nursing home. Like this is not a question of threat. And we saw from the Charlie Kirk funeral, the cult of personality still revolves around Trump. Because, like, who gave the last speech at Charlie Kirk's funeral? It was not Charlie Kirk's widow. It was Trump who gave a speech that had very little to do with Charlie Kirk and almost everything else to do with just Trump himself. Like, only Donald Trump could go to somebody else's funeral and give a campaign speech and get away with it.
Honestly, I honestly can't, like, thinking through history, of course, he's amplified in this day and age, so it's hard to, go through like, old, political figures, people like, if you look like Caesar, those guys, they knew how to work propaganda, but it's like it's just so unbelievable. Like all the stuff, it's just like one thing after another. And I can't think of a guy in history that was more of a narcissist. I mean, like, I can't think of one. Like, even, you can say whatever, Hitler, Stalin, go down the line, Mussolini. I mean, I don't think they hold a candle to him in narcissism.
No, the narcissism, yeah. The narcissism and the need to make everything about him is like, this is a president who really does think that he should have control over our lives. And like everything that we say and do and eat and watch should be filtered through, what does Donald Trump want for me? That is a level of insanity that we really only see with history's greatest dictators.
Yeah, I mean, it's frightening when you just watch him, like that UN speech. I'm like, how can anyone watch that and go, like, so I dove down the rabbit hole on that. I'm like, oh, let me go see what the MAGA people are saying. And they're like, bomb the UN. I'm like, bomb the UN. What are you talking? I mean, it's like, it was crazy. The guy was going on about, I put a $500 million bid on this place and, and what did they, terrazza? I don't even know what that is, but he's like, I would have given you marble. They gave you terrazza or whatever that, It was like when I was, because I didn't watch it because I have like, there's two people's voices I can't listen to. They almost like put me into fits, is his voice and RFK, because like he sounds like he's got like a garbage disposal in his throat. It's like I just can't, and they're both to me like batshit crazy, and I mean I just can't listen to either one. But I'm sitting there like listening, I'm like, I was just seeing like headlines from his speech, little snippets, and I'm like, and at first you're like, oh, is that the Onion? I'm like, oh no, like he's going on like, the escalators out to get him. You guys sabotaged me.
They sabotaged my teleprompter. And it's like, it's just, it is a level of everything revolves around me. And I think that is such a commitment to narcissism. I think most people just can't actually get there because most people do at some point have someone else in their life that they care about. He does not. I mean, he clearly hates his wife and his wife clearly hates him. He hates his children. He doesn't have any friends except Jeffrey Epstein, apparently. There's no one in his life who is not either on his payroll or hoping to get something from him. And, one of the things you see a lot with a lot of the Republicans have really just become like the hardcore Trump cultists. It was like, oh, what does Trump have on these people? And I will just say it's nothing. Like there's no blackmail. There's no like compromise tape needed for somebody like Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz to just completely debase themselves in order to please Trump because they want to be near power and they want to play golf with the president.
Power and money. That's what it's all about.
And being on TV.
It's a complete grift. It's a complete grift. The whole thing. It's like, we're in a grifting, like it's it's just the whole thing's a grift, like all of them, everything, Charlie Kirk, a grift, I mean, I think like on that South Park episode, I think they pretty much nailed Charlie Kirk, that's what they were, kind of labeling it, and, they completely nailed it, but it's just mind boggling. And it's like, it's just so hard to get through. And like, that's why, I like, your book, it kind of makes you understand the mindset and where it's coming from, because it's hard for people to understand that. Like, like us, we're, I think we're critical thinkers. I think, we probably had classical educations, so we learned about, how to, Socratic method and things like this, but you know, but for them, it's just out the door. It's like, like I said, it's like arguing with like, religious fanatics at this
Right.
point. It's
Right.
like,
And we,
and you just like,
yeah, for
yeah,
most
it's
people,
great. So,
yeah.
So, the last part I want to get in the segment is I want to talk about, the left. What should the left learn about storytelling, even if it hates the idea of selling myth? Because, we love the truth. It's
Right.
like, but, we think of it as a shield, but it doesn't work. I mean, is there something, because they don't want to go down that path. It's always like, do we do that? I mean, I remember I was doing an interview years ago. It was not long after Super Size Me. I think Michael Moore I think he had just come out with the 9/11 thing. And people
Sure.
like the people on the right, oh, it's propaganda, this and that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have any problem with Michael doing this. I'm like, because you know what? The left's never had a propagandist ever.
Right.
I mean, I can't think
Right.
of one in America. And I was like, I like that he's doing this because people were listening and people were watching, and, I mean, when you're making a documentary and making $190 million at the box office, people are listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you think there's a space for that? Or do you think it's just like, no, we have to be a purist and we can't go there?
Well, it's hard because the far right, they will just lie. And the bigger the lies are, the more people respond to them. I mean, we've all been told like, oh, if somebody asks you a question, you tell the truth. But if you're one of these people like these propagandists or like these conspiracy theorists, the more you lie, the more you get to be on TV and the better your t-shirt sales are. And if you tell the truth, people are going to be like, I don't want to hear that. If Alex Jones, reacted to a shooting with, it's probably a really disturbed individual, we should probably do something about guns, he'd lose half his audience in like 3 seconds. But if he's screaming about how it was Antifa and, it was the transgender mafia and we're going to go to war with the left, I mean, that's what his audience expects. So I think, the left is sort of like, we are expected to tell the truth, and telling the truth is what we should be doing. The problem is we make it so technical and so jargon heavy and almost incomprehensible. I remember at some point fairly early in this Trump 2.0, the maybe the Senate Democrats Twitter account put out like Democratic wins this week. And it was this like image, but the text was so small in these like giant blocks of like numbers and figures. I'm like, I'm a Democrat. I can't make heads or tails of it. I can't even read it. During the 2024 presidential campaign, Trump is just lying about I'm gonna cut your electric bill in half, and groceries are gonna be 20% less, and gas is gonna be $1. And Kamala Harris is talking about like, we're gonna create an opportunity economy, and it's gonna be top down, middle out, bottom up. I'm like, I don't understand that. I understand my electric bill is going to get cut in half. It's a completely insane lie, but you can understand why somebody would go, one person is telling me a truth that is incomprehensible. The other person is lying to me spectacularly. I'm just not going to vote.
But it's actually amazing because like I was very like, I'm a progressive. I backed, Bernie in 2016 and 2020. And I'm still convinced to this day that in 2016, if he had run head to head against Trump, I think Bernie beats him. I really do. I still believe that because I mean, it's anecdotal, but I knew so many people because I was living in Austin, Texas at the time.
Sure.
So you get a lot of libertarians and, the people living on the periphery, but you talk to them all and they all like all these people, and some of them are friends I knew. And they're like, yeah, it's down to me it's between Bernie or Trump. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They can't be more opposite. Right. But that's what their choices was. They wanted nothing else. They wanted nothing else. And that's why I think, I mean, like I said, I know it's anecdotal, but those people I knew, if they had marched out, if Bernie had run head to head, they would have voted for Bernie over Trump. And, I mean, that's just the delusionment with the, two-party system. But, once again, like when Biden won the nomination, I was like, you know, because I've never been a Biden fan. Like, I remember, dating myself, but, in high school. And like, I remember like, giving him a hard time, with the whole plagiarism
The
thing
plagiarism
and this
thing,
and
yeah.
that. And I always thought he was just like, he was just, the typical moderate, middle of the road Democrat kind of guy. He did not, but he did a great job of unwinding all the damage Trump did just with the
Yeah.
infrastructure work and everything.
Yeah.
And they did nothing. Like, first, I think it was a mistake. The Kamala thing was a mistake. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I still think they should have pushed through with Biden, actually, because I thought that was a big mistake. And I also think the other mistake is, all right, now you're going to Kamala, but you're not going to give us a primary. You're just forcing her on us, And I think that was a mistake. I mean, I just don't, the Democrats, I mean, they did no messaging on how much Biden did. Like, when you go through the numbers, he did a lot. I mean, he untangled a lot. And, I mean, I've been, hyping on the inequality train for some time. Like, my last film I had been trying to make since like 2008. Like, they just don't, so I've had people tell me, no, they know how to message. I still don't believe that. I still don't believe the Democrats really know how to message. I think it's lost. It's like the line I had for this is like, when I look at, they use propaganda and media. I was like, it's like the conservatives are getting, Marvel blockbusters while the left is bringing like PowerPoint presentations to a knife fight.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what we're getting. You can't think of anything more boring than a PowerPoint presentation. And I mean, that's how I look at it. That's, that's what it is. We'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be like some super hero propagandist from the left. I'd like to see it because I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to get into the last segment here and, a little fun. So my thought is like, I know it seems like it's a weird question to ask. So do you think Bigfoot was a socialist? You can answer this. You don't have to answer it. But, I think, like he's no wage slavery, no landlord. He has no K, and he sounds pretty communal. I mean, I see him. I had a lot of people like, no, I think he's a libertarian, but I think he's a socialist. I think Bigfoot is a man of the people. I mean, I don't know where I got to find out where the Bigfoot community is on that. I'm gonna have to put out a poll.
Yeah, Bigfoot, if I had to sort of give a political ideology to Bigfoot, I'd feel like he's like one of those French resistance communists living in the forest and like arguing over doctrine. They're like occasionally popping out to like steal some eggs or something, but like really feeling bad about it. And arguing over, how many eggs to steal and whether to write a note to the farmer. Because it does seem like Bigfoot just sort of appears, kind of does some things, and like goes away, and like knows he's being watched, but doesn't really care, but always looks back to make sure that the camera is like on him at the right angle. I don't know. I get a kind of communist vibe from Bigfoot.
I do too. That's why I started this podcast. Yeah. I got the feel, he's a comrade.
Yeah.
I think he's a man of not just the people. I think of all creatures. He's, in the animal world, I always say like the capybara. If everyone was like a capybara, the world would be a wonderful, wonderful place.
I agree.
Yeah. Just you see Bigfoot, and so like the capybara as a goodwill ambassador to the world. So it's fun. So I want to finish with like one last question for you here in this thread, and is like, what does this Bigfoot metaphor show us about myths? Silly or dangerous? How does it survive?
Yeah, it shows the durability of a good story. There is always going to be something alluring about the creature in the woods, and, can you go off and find it? Can you finally reveal the secret and tell the truth? That's always going to be a part of our storytelling. And I think where so much of the conspiracy world really succeeds is they are really good storytellers. There's heroes and villains. There's ups and downs. There's secret battles. There's documents they don't want you to read. There's like shadow governments. It's very compelling stuff. And I mean, there's a reason why the 70s paranoia thriller genre is still so well regarded, because it makes for good storytelling. And I think whether it's Bigfoot or whether it's QAnon or whether it's the deep state, there is an element of stories and characters and kind of very, very ancient ways of kind of tapping into our fears that I think really good myths do very well. And so a story like Bigfoot does it really well. And I think something much more contemporary, if you look at something like QAnon, plays into those very primal myths in a very relatable kind of way.
So, all right. One final question before we go is like, who will survive longer in sort of the zeitgeist? Bigfoot, Trump, or QAnon? Like, if any of those three, who do you think survives the longest?
You know, I think something like Bigfoot is always going to be with us, whether we call it Bigfoot or something else. You know, you go back to ancient cultures, there's always some myth about a mythical creature, you know, that nobody can see, but we know it's out there. Trump, I feel like Trump and the people in his inner circle, I feel like in like 10 or 15 years, it's going to be like, you can't find anybody who is part of that. I mean, it's like a country that's been liberated from a fascist conquest. Like 10 years later, like anybody who collaborated is like gone, and everybody like universally agrees that they hated that period of time and like they want nothing to do with it and we should avoid it at all costs. I think like we're going through this really, really tough period now, but it's so intense that it feels to me like it will not last all that much longer once the figurehead is out of the picture. So I think we'll still be talking about Bigfoot.
I agree. I agree too. And, you know, just one last touching on is like how you said we won't be able to recognize, like no one will claim to have like supported him or voted him. It's the same thing like when the, you know, American GIs or, you know, the Red Army or whatever took over town, like nobody was a Nazi. No one voted for him. No one liked Hitler.
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't me. Yeah. I didn't know what was going on. Well, anyways, hey, Mike, I really can't thank you enough for coming on the show, and I hope to bring you back again. I got to think of something because, like, I'm going to dive into your book, and I might do something. I was thinking of one on Jewish space lasers, and like, I do want to do something on anti-Semitism.
Sure.
And you know, it's always been there, but you know, I feel like it's been rearing its ugly head a little more. Maybe I'll craft an episode down the road, and we can talk about that, and we can talk about Jewish space lasers too.
Sounds great. I'll be here.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye-bye. Here's the takeaway. Myths aren't just lies. They're survival stories. Trump knows that. QAnon knows that. And if progressives want to win, we need to tell better stories than billionaires and red hats. Huge thanks to Mike Rothschild for joining me. Check out his book, The Storm is Upon Us, for the full saga of how conspiracy culture reshaped American politics. And if you like this episode, rate us 5 stars, or at least pretend to, the way Trump pretends to pay lawyers.